Wow. What a week, huh?
Amazing.
Whirlwind. America's great again.
Shocked it is, yeah.
How does it feel to be in the golden era, boys?
So golden.
First week of the golden era is, yeah, making me nervous.
If it keeps up this pace, like, I don't know, you can't. Surely, this is
There's
just
no way.
this is just starting with a bang.
Ha. You're not MAGA enough, obviously. You're
MAGA harder.
You're not a believer.
Well, I don't know. I'm pretty,
No, obviously, you just proved it that they're not by saying it can't last.
at that intensity. No.
Yeah, but if you were MAGA, you wouldn't say that,
Well, no. The Americans are awesome. I love their infectious can-do attitude. Is just this week we got a master display of it, but it's not sustainable over the long term. You can't just.
Well,
But yeah, it's a good start. Apart from the ugly stuff, but
MAGA's going to make you eat those words.
is he now?
Well, it's going to make you healthy.
Yep.
It's going to make you healthy again.
Maha is going to make you eat those words.
The vegetables.
Apart from the mRNA vaccines, but yeah, it's going to be awesome. Yeah, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like it's what partly what makes it a wild week is like you hear one thing and you go, yes, promises made, promises kept, awesome, and then the next post on your feed is, where did that come from? What? No, that no one asked for that.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Really, it's out of left field. It wasn't even a topic of discussion.
What was?
And Stargate, Larry Ellison, Sam Altman, $500 billion. Let's go. Anti-vaccine cancer, anti-cancer vaccine, something like that. It's just like, why? That was day 2, by the way.
Yeah.
No,
But Larry Ellison, you're not putting him in the MAGA camp.
No, he's in the White House on day 2. Trump's selling it to the base. This is it. This is what's going to make America enter the golden age, the golden era. Sometimes the good and the bad and the ugly are wrapped up in the same item. So, executive order, I hereby declare, for a period of 90 days, we are suspending all foreign aid. And you're like, yeah, awesome. All the NGO network's going to fall. And finally, the rest of the West can get a chance to breathe from the persistent bullshit of the CIA and the State Department and the source networks, et cetera, et cetera. Except in the small print, it says, except Israel and Egypt.
And Ukraine.
And Ukraine? Was Ukraine
No.
excluded?
They clarified. They've got a clarification.
Zelensky's my main point of information on that, and he said there's been no cancellation of aid to Ukraine.
Really now?
Mm-hmm. Who said it? Who said it was? Nobody said it was. Nobody officially said it was, did they?
What?
That aid to Ukraine was cancelled.
They said all aid is cancelled except Israel and Egypt.
And Ukraine.
No,
they didn't say that, but...
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you read the actual document, it says except Israel and Egypt. That's it.
Then it might mean, what do they mean by aid? And does this tranche over here for Ukraine come as something else and blah, blah, blah. But yes, okay. So
depends what you mean by aid. Aid to Ukraine was basically like as... Who was it said? Some senator... I think it was what he called the transient, the shocky guy, leader of the Republicans, Mitch McConnell, reminded everybody, I think it was last year, that I think he said something like 90% or something of the aid to Ukraine doesn't actually go to Ukraine. It goes directly from the American government coffers to American industry. So you're not going to cancel that, right?
Okay, well, this isn't this aid to Ukraine doesn't change. It's clear still that the spirit of the promise is the pledge is to end the war in Ukraine, at least stop U.S. involvement in propping up the Kiev regime. So that's this. Whether that includes Ukraine or not, in that EO, it's that's still on the table. And I suppose then the other thing is that the other exception, Israel, that's also consistent with what he said before. MAGA is pro-Israel. MAGA is officially going to go all the way with Israel. In fact, he's gone further than Biden and granted something that Biden, the government before him apparently withheld from sending to Israel, 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs, like Israel needed it to flatten Gaza. But maybe it could have been helpful to get right down to those tunnels. And then he's gone even further than just, quietly letting some previously banned munitions get to Israel. In this readout in this report, it quotes him was he talking to the press on Air Force One? He's really gone all the way here. If you scroll down the first couple of paragraphs, Donald Trump has suggested large numbers of Palestinians should leave Gaza, quote, just to clean out the whole strip, after ordering the U.S. military to restart shipments of 2,000-pound bombs to Israel. The U.S. president said he wants Gaza residents to move to neighboring countries and that they could be displaced temporarily or could be long-term. That's basically what Israel's wanted the whole time, to completely expel everyone from Gaza. His tack on it, he says, you're talking about probably 1.5 million people, and we just clean out that whole thing and say, it's over. So the can-do American attitude is awesome over here, but over here it's like you're talking about complete and utter ethnic cleansing, giving Israel everything it wants. So again, though, that's not inconsistent with MAGA campaigning. It's not like he was running on, I'm going to end that war too. It's just
the anti-Israel MAGA movement was hoping that it would somehow work its way into the Israeli conflict, but that was always only ever a hope and a pipe dream, considering what he's said previously.
Yeah. It's not surprising.
Yeah.
So you get the eminently sensible stuff like what he was saying about California and releasing the waters and stop protecting this fish, to the completely nuts. Well, actually part of that thing was it an executive order, or was it just a quip he said where he said California will get federal relief if and when they institute voter ID for elections. I don't know.
And release the water. It was those two stipulations. That was during the little presser thing that he said, like on the tarmac there when he went to California. So I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything as far as like an actual.
Okay, that's something you threw out there. That's classic Trump. And I'm cool with that. Because the liberal media is up in arms about it, but it is a problem. Like California's, the Democrat Party's grip on the voting situation there, and ballot harvesting, and anyone and everyone being able to vote. That's a serious problem, and that's good that you're bringing that up. And then to the completely barmy, like his post about Russia and claiming that Russia stole hypersonic tech from the USA. I mean, that's pure bullshit. Does he know better than that? I'm not sure, but he's seriously suggesting that Russia is ahead of the US in rocketry because they stole it from us.
So where's my rocket?
I don't know if you the Biden's last action is probably worth a mention as well before we get lost in Trump and where this is going. The pardoning of Fauci and Milley and DC Capitol Police officers or the heads, I'm not sure. And of course his entire family. The Fauci pardon is, he responded to it. He told Politico, St. Anthony Fauci, "Let me be perfectly clear, I've committed no crime and there are no possible grounds for any allegation or threat of criminal investigation or prosecution of me. But the mere articulation of these baseless threats and the potential that they will be acted upon create immeasurable and intolerable distress for me and my family." So you're guilty.
Mm-hmm.
But of what? What are you guilty of, Fauci? It may be related, maybe not. It's indirectly related. But the new CIA director, John Ratcliffe, is it? Their first statement with him as head is that they're going with COVID was leaked from the Wuhan lab in China.
Mm-hmm. That's been pretty apparent for a while. That's where they're going, you know.
Yeah. I did a bit of background. He was Trump's DNI, the position they want for Tulsi Gabbard, briefly in his first term. So they know each other. That's kind of why Trump likes him and tapped him up for CIA head. And in the intervening years, he's worked for Heritage Foundation, producing this massive report that is all about exactly this: how COVID began, its origins from a lab leak in Wuhan. So that's the angle he's been working on in the intervening years, and it's the first thing he pushes out as the new CIA director. Which, saying that, would have got us off YouTube 2 years ago. But even that's a limited hangout, we think, because Wuhan Lab's connected, but it's not the origin of where these things were created. Anyway, that alone is enough for Fauci to sweat bullets and to happily accept a pardon dating back to 2014. 2014. Why was it that backdated 10 years, do we think?
For Fauci?
Yeah.
That was that's when he was involved he began the gain of function research at the National Institutes of Health.
Okay. Began then. And was that after Obama had formally said moratorium on that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So at the point it becomes illegal, he gets a pardon backdated to it. Yeah. So he's given in his inauguration speech, the beginning of a golden era. He says the US will plant a flag on Mars, its flag, the American flag, on Mars. What, during his term?
Maybe.
He has signed, indeed, there's no promise kept. He signed the executive order for declassifying all remaining government files on the murders of JFK, RFK, and MLK. Apparently in JFK's case, that still only amounts to about 5,000. Some 5 million had already been published. And I don't know how much of that is redacted, going back to 1990 or so. So apparently it's just 5,000. I haven't had a chance to look. I don't know where they're posted, actually.
Nothing's been released yet.
Nothing. Okay.
So I looked into what the actual executive order said, and so it was basically within 5 days of signing this executive order, you have to. It designates a group of people to come up with a plan for coming up with a plan, and then 45 days after the signing of the order, then those people who are designated as having been commissioned to come up with a plan then have to present said plan for releasing said documents.
Yeah, I see.
So it's kind of like,
it's in the whirlwind of executive orders. It sounds awesome, wow! But the reality of facing sort of death by committee, is that you can stall so much of the stuff. What's his name? O'Keefe did another one of his undercover stunts where he got some girl to go on a date or something, or to go on a dinner date with this guy who is currently some kind of junior staffer, or was at the Biden White House, and got him talking, over some drinks, about how they have and could potentially stall Trump, and that's simply by committee. Yeah, sure, no problem. The executive order, okay, it's 45 days, sure, and then we'll need a committee first to get the paper going, and then we'll have a final report, and then you can run out the clock basically in 4 years. Mm-hmm. So that'll be like where the MAGA train will kind of run into the sludge of 4 million bureaucrats,
something insane,
who hope, I guess, to absorb it all and just slowly diffuse it. But we'll see. Trump's come out swinging, so he may not stand for that and make an example here and there wherever he can. If he can do that, can you fire people? Can you fire public servants? It's not easy, right? In Europe, it's just about impossible.
There has to be like a 30-day notice, and depending on like who it is, some people have to have like a 30-day notice that you give to Congress, and so it's not quite so simple. Even some of the firings that he's done of the the DEI workers and the inspector generals that he did yesterday, I think. Those are, at least from what I've seen, people are saying like there's questions about whether or not he could actually do it because of that process that some federal employees require. So some of it, like when he's signing the executive orders, you're like, hell yeah, burn it down. And then when it actually, like when you read the executive order and realize the reality of the situation, it's kind of like, well, I'm kind of nonplussed.
Yeah. I'll just sit here and wait for the committee to come out. And I don't know, on foreign affairs, obviously Israel gets everything it wants so far. This post he made, I think it was on day 2, was early on in the week, about how he's going to end the war in Ukraine. I wonder what the Russians think of this stuff when they see it. Do they try to read between the lines? Do they laugh? Do they roll their eyes up and think this is just the same as the last regime? This is his post to Truth Social. I think on the 21st, it was literally 24 hours after his inauguration speech. Okay, we're off to a good start. I'm not looking to hurt Russia. I love the Russian people. And I've always had a very good relationship with President Putin. And this despite the radical left's Russia hoax. This is good. We must never forget that Russia helped us win the Second World War, losing almost 60 million lives in the process. That's not true. 60 million is the total dead in the war, but whatever. All of that being said, I'm going to do Russia, whose economy is failing, no it isn't, and President Putin a very big favor. Settle now and stop this ridiculous war. It's only going to get worse. If we don't make a deal, and soon, I have no other choice but to put high levels of taxes, tariffs, and sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the United States. What? Like what? Uranium? And various other participating countries. Let's get this war, which never would have started if I were president, correct, over with. We can do it the easy way or the hard way. And the easy way is always better. It's time to make a deal. No more lives should be lost. What do you think of that? Is that like...
Well, Putin agreed with him.
Did he respond to this?
Not to that specifically that I know of, but he did make some statements. Like there was one particular statement that I'm thinking of where he did say that he agreed that the war likely wouldn't have happened had Trump been in office. And then he went one step further to say that had the 2020 election not been stolen from him.
Bang on. Yeah,
which was like...
That's the first time he's ever said such. Like, he waited until now. That's like, you know, there's one thing to not interfere in other countries' affairs, but to be aware that 2020 was rigged and not say it until the mistake was corrected. I mean, that's... But... And this is Russia. Russia that's supposed to have interfered and continues interfering in Western democracies. The largest Western democracy has its election rigged, and the Russian interference machine just says nothing about it. Truth and fiction.
But they wouldn't if they were the ones who... If they're involved in rigging elections, they wouldn't say anything about it, you know.
Yes, but the premise was Russia was involved in rigging it for Trump. Their man didn't win in 2020. They didn't go, hang on a second.
Well, they've been insistent all along that they're not interested. They don't care who wins. They're not for or against anybody, you know, which is probably the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing about cutting off funding to foreign aid, that can't happen soon enough. But what does Trump understand by that? Does he understand it like Mike Benz understands it, that the U.S. State Department funnels a shit ton of money to NGOs in foreign countries that kick up a fuss and start a protest going that leads to a regime change? You know, that's what's happening in Slovakia right now, and it's like nothing's changed. It's so far. Yeah. Oh, there were other funny details that kind of only emerged. They weren't publicized, but they emerged in other ways, like the pulling of the security detail for Fauci. Somebody got wind of that. Or maybe Fauci himself complained about it. And CNN asked Trump, what happened here? And Trump's like, well, you know, he has enough money. He can pay for his own security. It was Fauci and someone else.
There was a few people, actually. Let me see if I've got the list here. I mean, there was only like maybe 4 people total that he pulled the security detail for. It was Bolton, Pompeo,
Bolton,
Pompeo, Fauci, and Ross. Where was this name? Yeah. Oh no, Hook. That was it. Yeah. So he ended the Secret Service detail for Fauci, Pompeo, Bolton, and Hook, who was, I think, Iranian embassy something or another.
Yeah. State Department, U.S. Foreign Office.
Yeah. Brian Hook. That's what it was. Okay.
And I don't know if he knew this, but his response to CNN when asked about whether he would feel partly responsible if anything would happen to Fauci, I was thinking he should answer, why would anything happen to Fauci?
Yeah.
What's wrong? right? But it shows again some kind of self-awareness on the part of the other side, the normies, that Fauci's done something wrong, or at least that a lot of people really don't like him.
Yeah, more so that that would be the narrative, you know, that there's a lot of rhetoric and anti-Fauci statements that don't amount to evidence of criminality, but that someone might attack him, and that's why he would complain about it. Not so it's not an admission of guilt.
Right. Agreed. Okay, so in between all the executive orders, which hilariously began right during the inauguration parade, which was classic Trump. He flies to Western North Carolina, and then on straight to LA. I think that's part of the. I mean, if this was a campaign and he was doing that, they just say, "Wow, you know, he's trying to drum up votes."
Mm-hmm.
But he's now a lame duck president, and his first few days has gone straight to
all these places
where there's nothing to gain politically.
Yeah, that was an impressive thing, and people have made comments about the fact that like he gets up early in the morning to go to Western North Carolina, and he's there for however many hours, and then he gets on another plane and goes to LA, does more meetings and more interviews and things, and then continues on until like 1 a.m. doing more press briefings.
Yeah,
and it's that's one of the things that you were talking about earlier, where it was like this kind of thing isn't sustainable. It's like you can't get up at 8 a.m. and go to bed after like flying across the country all day.
But he's been doing that for his whole life.
Well, I know, and that's one of those things about Trump that it's like, surely this can't last forever. But the man is like he lives to work.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't seem that the same restrictions that apply to normal humans apply to him, because he can do all this stuff while also just living on Diet Coke and Big Macs.
Apparently,
at age 80.
Well, he's 78, is he?
Yeah,
he's got a couple of years. 80's the point where things start going downhill. He's got a couple of years. Halfway through his term, he's going to start collapsing.
Yeah, and it's the Trump effect, I guess. I mean, what's he going to do in Western North Carolina? Well, inject some urgency into the cleanup. You'd hope. I mean, you're still against, like we said before, the kind of the sludge, the bureaucratic sludge of, well, there's a lot of paperwork to fill out. But he did announce the deployment of the U.S. Corps of Engineers to fix roads and bridges, which is something that, and he announced specifically cutting red tape on this issue. How much he can do, I'm not sure, but we might well see it then if in a couple of months' time, a lot of the problems there are straightened out. And this thing, I know he went to LA right away, and I know he was ragging on the LA mayor, Karen Bass, and Gavin Newsom. He's done it before, but he said something just before leaving. So I think this is still while in Asheville, North Carolina. Now, I know the account who's picked this clip is kind of notorious for going full conspiracy, but have a listen.
I don't know if we've ever seen anything like it, frankly. They say the biggest in the history of California. I think, has anything bigger than that happened in the whole country ever? It looks like, I don't want to say what it looks like, but you know what I'm going to say. It looks like something hit it. and we won't talk about what hit it, but it is a bad, bad situation.
Mm-hmm. He's talking about the fires around LA. Like something hit it. Like what, Trump? Say it. I won't say it, but we know what.
I want him to do the Kanye. I want him to do the Kanye where he says, "I'm not going to say it. You know who I'm going to say, but I can't say it." It was the Jews.
Except here.
I want him to have that kind of a moment where he says something like that.
He's
and then
done it in the past, I think, where he's inadvertently rambled on and said it anyway. But he held his tongue. But that's interesting because it obviously suggests that he thinks the fires were started deliberately and in a way that's familiar to a chunk of people, if not most people, and that it's kind of the usual suspect. What? Deep state sabotage, chaos making, you know? There was a question for you, Joe, here. Do you want to answer that? You've been quiet, but I know it's been on your mind. From Jeff. Joe, can you explain in detail how, with Trump in power and with his planned actions, how this will wreck America? Do you think... Maybe he's not America per se, but I think you were thinking of
how
the West in general.
With Trump in power and his plan. Well, I mean, all the excitement from the first week of Trump coming in, hitting the ground running, and all that kind of stuff. And people getting super excited about it. I'm just like, well, you said the word nonplussed, and I'm kind of nonplussed because I've been around too long to get excited about something like that, because I know enough, I suppose, or I can infer enough about the way America works. Well, it has worked for a long time. And the kind of neoliberal world order, let's say, that underpins it and that existed before it. I know enough about that, and we just talked about the bureaucracy and all that kind of stuff, and the idea of him releasing the JFK and RFK and MLK details and all that kind of stuff. People, and stuff. I mean, it's like that's. I don't expect anything special to happen from that, so I'm not getting excited about that. Mm-hmm. And for the same reasons, I'm not getting excited about really anything else Trump says. I don't think he's going to make America great again in the way that he imagines, at least. The problem is, I mean, there's certain things he will be able to do, but I would be cynical even in that respect. In that, I'd be of the opinion that anything that he's allowed to do is just that he's being allowed to do it. Basically, Trump's not getting to do anything. Trump's not breaking the system. He hasn't drained the swamp. He hasn't overthrown the deep state. Everything he's doing, in my opinion, and all the excitement and the enthusiasm behind the MAGA movement is all being facilitated for a reason, and for not a good reason. So all these people cheering about Trump and getting excited about Trump and what Trump's doing are actually cheering on effectively the deep state. Trump is effectively an agent of the deep state.
So it's no longer Trump versus the deep state.
No, but
it's Trump.
Well, I mean, it's Trump versus the deep state to some extent, but these are people that are way more powerful than anybody can really even imagine, and they're way more powerful than Trump even knows. So he's like a, he's a dupe in that respect. They can lead him along by the nose and have him do their bidding as easily as they can anybody else, and that's basically how they operate. They lead people along by the nose, and they get things done through various different means. Coercion, manipulation, blackmail, whatever, etc. I'm not saying Trump's being blackmailed, but that there's enough people in that bureaucratic state that is within the American overt bureaucratic state, and then obviously the deep state. There's enough people within that bureaucracy who are all dyed-in-the-wool, long-term career politicians, and they know what side their bread is buttered on, basically. And basically, I suppose the main point is that what Trump is trying to do, and it's very clear what he's trying to do by his rhetoric and stuff, is he has decided that the neoliberal imperial world order that has existed for the past, I don't know, you can go back hundreds of years if you want, back to the British Empire or even before it. But anyway, that whole Western civilization, that has grown up over the past X number of hundreds of years, and has then matured into a global empire with America at the center of it, and their special relationship with the Brits and all of their vassals in Europe and stuff. That has been around for a very long time, and the modern world, basically, the modern globalized world, politically, economically, culturally, socially, is all based on that, basically. And you can't deconstruct it. You can't take out any one of those pillars without pulling the whole thing down, basically. And if you pull the whole thing down, the whole world goes to shit, basically, very quickly. So the people who have run the world for quite a long time have created a situation where the structure that they've created in terms of the globalized world is not something that you can. It's kind of got a, what do they call it, a kill switch, essentially, and built into it in a certain sense, where you can't take it apart without causing significant chaos. That doesn't mean that significant chaos and some level of collapse. That doesn't mean that afterwards you couldn't maybe rebuild something, or it could be a certain level of chaos and collapse, and then people could reorganize and rebuild or whatever. But it's going to be pretty dicey. But I think the next 4 years we're going to witness, to one extent or another, the collapse of the Western society that we have, modern Western society that has been built up over the past, let's say, 100 years, because that's what Trump is trying to do, basically. I mean, it's an empire. The world is an empire and run by America, and you can't stop financing that empire without it falling apart, without the empire itself falling apart. And a collapse of empire has very dire implications for the whole world, or everybody who's living under the empire. And that's Trump's intent, is clearly to do that. Trump is not happy. Anybody who you can read between the lines, but his whole ethos of Make America Great Again is essentially isolationist, and that's the opposite of empire. So it's you've got a bunch of vassals that you've been controlling and financing for decades and decades and decades, and you're just going to basically take all that support and infrastructure away. What do you think is going to happen?
A chain reaction.
Well, it'll fall apart.
But surely he's aware of this to a certain extent, and would have the means of having smart people kind of coming up with a means of navigating narrow waters, let's say. Mm-hmm. Now, whether or not that can actually be done because of various factors, both real and covert, that's kind of a separate issue. But Katherine Austin Fitz did an interview recently where she was saying something along a similar line, where a lot of things that Trump is trying to do is different from the way things have been done, and along the lines that you're talking about, where America has financed itself and the world on empire, and trying to do certain things to change that requires changing how you do things. And so, at least it seemed to me that her perspective was that he is trying to find a way of navigating the rocks. But the question is, number one, can he avoid the obvious pitfalls? And number two, can he not be misled along the way into doing something that inadvertently makes things worse?
Mm-hmm.
And those are like two kind of open questions. We're only not even a week into this, so we don't really know. And at the same time, like, we still have a long way to go as far as the things that he said that he wanted to do and people he wanted to get in. RFK Jr. for one, Kash Patel and the FBI is another, Tulsi Gabbard is another. Like, we don't even know if they're going to actually be confirmed. And I mean, all the things that they say would be great. And it would be wonderful to have them on board as part of the administration to be able to actually do things. But we're not even at the point of them being in yet. And there's big questions about whether or not that will happen.
Whether or not they'll be confirmed, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, RFK Jr.'s in next Wednesday up for his confirmation hearing. Basically, well, I suppose the thing that kicks it off is Trump's kind of trade. Is I mean, why is he talking about tariffs? Do you know why he's talking about tariffs? Why he came out of the starting blocks talking about tariffs, going to tariff everybody up the wazoo? Why was there no tariff? These are fundamental questions he'd ask himself. Why is Trump doing that when that wasn't happening to the same extent, certainly not to such a widespread extent, and not so overtly and openly under any other previous administration?
Because tariffs are part of the 19th century Doggy Dog World. And Trump has said many times now that that's when we did best. That's when our trade surplus was the greatest. That's when we didn't need an income tax because we relied completely on tariffs. And our economy boomed like never before. So he wants to return to that, the Doggy Dog World. But the thing is, as you're alluding to, the Doggy Dog World was inherently more unstable, poorer. Was it worse or better than today? Jesus, I don't know. At least the wars were a bit more honest. I want this, so I take it. The scramble for Africa, for example. Now, currently, Trump's launched a scramble for Greenland and Canada and wherever else nearby, which is consistent with what he's saying about returning to a kind of fortress America. 100% tariffs on everything. Unless people are good to us and, basically kowtow in key ways we want. At the moment, no one's kowtowing to us, or they used to, but in fact now they become like welfare queen dependents on us, and we want to kick them out, just like we want to kick out the illegals. So it's all of a piece.
So I suppose a kind of mental exercise you could do would be that. What do you think the implications would be for Europe and wider global security as a result of Trump making good on his claims to basically pull in, like I said before, the American imperial largesse, that America isn't protecting anybody anymore. It's not doing what the neoliberals did. It's not managing an empire anymore. It's letting all these people just stand on their own or fall on their own. What's the possible? What are the risks involved in that? You think that will just happen? I mean, have you seen the fear and loathing and gnashing of teeth going on in Europe over Trump? Why are those people shitting themselves so much? Why do they give the impression that they're very desperate and they're frantically trying to figure out what they're going to do? Why would surely European countries are all, it's the European Union, it's this global power, they're all friends, they're all developed first world countries. What's the big deal? Why shit yourself so much?
I don't know why. I don't know what they say why it is, but I know what it is.
Why?
It's because the European Union and other related European institutions are politically weak. There is no real consensus. We still all speak different languages. We're still all different countries, still different nationalities. It hasn't really progressed in the way they imagine it has in Brussels. They thought by now there'd be federalization. The euro coin, the eurozone was meant to be the first step into making the United States of Europe. And ironically, it was sabotaged over the decades from getting that far by Washington. It wanted a cohesive-ish free trade partner but not one that would actually be able to say, you know what, we're not going with you on this war. In fact, we're going to agree with Russia or China on this issue. No. So that lack of fundamental cohesiveness has meant when this happened, there is no. It won't be able to swim on its own.
Exactly. Well, that's what
Brussels will collapse.
Right.
Brussels, not the place, but the European structures.
Right. And what does that do to European economies?
It sets them loose in the market.
Right. And some will do better than others, maybe, or none, in a highly competitive world with them stuck in between Russia and China and America, Russia and China. How are the Europeans gonna fare, having spent the last 40, 50, probably since the Second World War, as vassals of the American Empire and living on the scraps thrown to them effectively to a large extent by the American Empire, and being cloistered or protected by the American Empire and controlled to a large extent. All of their bureaucracy is controlled.
As they stand now, worse than they are doing.
Yeah.
But part of MAGA is mega.
Mm-hmm.
He's been having, you've got Elon Musk is now making direct calls into AfD party campaign rallies.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking directly to people.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, go on your own. Go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
While at the same time,
with a clause, if there is a corresponding realization in Europe, and Germany, for example, goes it alone, they'll stop losing, because they're currently losing by being a vassal.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of having its industry sucked out of it by not being allowed to get cheap Russian gas.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, Volkswagen's packing up and shipping off to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's losing in the neoliberal order. That's collapsing. They're losing anyway.
Right.
So if this prompts the proper rational response, then it's open. I don't think it's doom if
European countries go populist, which may well be the case, as significant number of them.
They seem poised to, yeah.
Right. So who are they going to align with?
Russia.
Right. And what does that say to America?
They're traitors.
Huh?
They're traitors, and then they can start a war if they want.
Right.
But this time it'll be Russia and Europe versus America.
Yeah.
In 20, 30 years, when they actually build a fucking army again, because they don't have one at the moment.
Well,
but we're still several steps down the line. Currently, there's like 100,000 US troops positioned in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be gone before the US can't cut Europe loose with them still in it. Maybe they can't. If they do, they're ballsy. But they've got targets on their back.
Didn't Trump just order 50,000 troops from Europe back home?
I think that wasn't clear to me. I saw a 20,000 figure. I think he'd like that. Right. If they go home, we'll see.
So you're saying
we're still in the early days, though, because maybe we have a clue as to where this is going in his call with the Danish Prime Minister this week about Greenland. The Financial Times have it. I don't know whether to believe them. I mean, I am inclined to believe them that this write-up of Donald Trump's call with the Danish PM over taking Greenland from Denmark went as reported here in the FT. Headline: Donald Trump in fiery call with Denmark's Prime Minister over Greenland. The money shot. If you scroll down to, it was horrendous, said one of the people on the call. He was very firm. It was a cold shower before this proposal that the US just take Greenland. It was very hard to take seriously, but I do think it is serious and potentially very dangerous. And then below, where are we now? The word search, many European officials. Yeah. These next 3 paragraphs are the money shot. Many European officials had hoped his comments, like while campaigning, about seeking control of Greenland for national security reasons were a negotiating ploy. And we all thought that. We all thought, oh, he's out of the deal. He's aiming high and he'll come back to a good trade deal or something. Mm-hmm. They all hoped it was a ploy to gain more influence over Greenland. Russia and China are both also jostling for position in the Arctic, and that's what the FT presumed, that's what we presume. But the call with Prime Minister Fredriksson has crushed such hopes, deepening the foreign policy crisis between the NATO allies. Someone who was there, the intent was very clear. The Americans want Greenland. The Danes are now in crisis mode. The Danes are utterly freaked out by this. Okay, I think Trump is trying to break up NATO. I think he's constantly trying to break it. Mm-hmm. So that's he is literally trying to rip a pillar out of set order.
And what happens then? When there's no more NATO to protect the world.
What does that mean, though? Protect the world from who?
Just provide security. From any potential threats. But how they've operated, basically. It means
the number one overwhelming source of threats is the fucking United States government.
Yeah, I know. Well,
so if the United States government pulls out, in theory, your security goes up.
But well, not really. I mean, it's about perception, right? It's about the perception of America is no longer there to enforce the global rules-based order, as I like to call it.
Well, then your COVIDiots and your libtards freak out and they lose the next elections.
Well, all sorts of
over the next 10 years.
Other countries start making different alliances because they no longer feel like they're being forced or coerced. They're no longer under the threat of US sanctions or military invasion or blackmail or whatever, or dirty tricks, etc. It's basically what he's doing. My basic point is that what he's doing is undoing the global order that everybody has been living in for the past 80 years at least, and have been so unaware of it and how it actually works because they're like fish in water. They don't even notice it. And nobody, so they're not even aware of it, so they can't even think about it in those terms. But if they manage to think about it in those terms, you start to realize that dismantling that global order is going to have serious repercussions. And I'm not saying there may be some kind of like moves to kind of like, make it worse, if you know what I mean, to exacerbate the kind of the fallout from the withdrawal of America as the imperial policeman and imperial patron. It could be made worse, but even on its own, dismantling that order, taking away the idea that everybody has lived in, and this is what I'm saying, people don't realize, is that pretty much everybody in the world, at least at the level of governments and then filtered down to some extent to the population, have been aware of America primarily as being the world's policeman. It's quite, the awareness is quite particular amongst politicians in most countries, all of whom over their careers have been made very aware of not just the overt perception of American control and power and influence in the world, but the way in which America has infiltrated through its intel agencies and diplomats, etc., most major countries in the world. Mm-hmm. So they've all accepted that. They've all accepted vassal status. All of the countries have more or less accepted vassal status long before now. And they've got comfortable with it. And when you take that away, and there's no longer that kind of an influence within those governments, or there's no longer the overt perception of America as being the one who's going to maintain order around the world, well then, yeah, you could say, well, that's great. Like everybody can then just have fun and like kind of like start trading with each other and all that kind of stuff, blah, 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 blah. But there's a lot of chaos involved in that, in alliances that would be formed. And it's not like America is just going away. It's America is reconfiguring itself, not as this empire that keeps everybody in line, whatever, but it's under Trump, it's going on the offensive in terms of probably using tariffs and sanctions and all that kind of stuff to undermine people who don't play ball with it. It's basically an aggressive, a more aggressive. It's actually weird to say it, but Trump is actually, while becoming more isolationist, he's actually making American foreign policy much more aggressive than it was under the imperial configuration, where sure, America was aggressive periodically, where it would invade different countries and coup a lot of countries, etc., etc., etc. But that was all in their minds to maintain order, to maintain the global rules-based order. Trump now is trying to do away with that, and he'll be allowed, I think, to do away with that, and then it becomes dog eat dog, which is fundamentally potentially much more destabilizing for everybody, especially given that they've all become so used over the past 80 to 100 years of living under this American century, where everybody could sit back, just be a good little vassal, do what you're told,
and work in service jobs.
And work.
I know, but France in the 1960s had a booming manufacturing base and independence. De Gaulle basically went like that to the dollar system, to the United States, said, "Fuck NATO, we're out of here," and look what happened to him. Now, economically, France being MAGA in the 60s was cool
at that time.
But now, when you have a service economy and you just want Amazon orders, you can't keep living like that. So yeah, there's a real shock coming, and it is going to be economic. So I would say to you, it's not NATO per se, but yes, it affects perception. Where Germany is wide open and screwed is that if the 100% tariffs go up on BMWs entering the United States market, they can't just turn around and go, "Oh, China." Because China's like, no, we have surplus. We're going to flood you with our cars. Germany is economically screwed. This economic security is potentially shot here. I'm not doing this it's just a coincidence, but it's interesting. And I want you to tell me what you think of this, especially given who's saying it, because it sounds remarkably like what you're saying.
Who is it?
Rory Stewart.
Who's that?
Like the most anti-Trumper in the United States, in the UK.
Was he a politician?
MP or former, ran for leader of the Conservative Party, hosts a podcast with that dickhead Alistair Campbell of the Dodgy Dossier fame. He writes, "Trump is quite different from almost all previous leaders since the early Middle Ages." Well, he's going way back beyond the 19th century. He does not even pretend with Greenland or Gaza or international aid to be acting for just reasons. The impact of this naked abuse of power will be staggering. So the similarity of what you're saying is that he sees doom in it and that it is naked power. I want this territory, give it to me.
Yeah. Trump sees that America has all this power and has been using it over the past, since the Second World War, has been using it to service an empire and, control the world just for the sake of controlling the world, basically. And he said that's ridiculous. That costs a lot of money. It doesn't have good impacts back at home. It involves a lot of job losses and a lot of immigration, all the different effects that you get from having an empire that are all negative from Trump's point of view. And we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to stand on our own. We're going to create alliances or whatever. We're going to take Canada, turn Canada into the 51st state. We're going to take Greenland. We're going to steal back the Panama Canal and whatever else we can do. Because
something else, withdrew from the Paris climate agreement.
All that business. We're not doing the international stuff anymore. We're not doing empire and international globalist kind of things anymore, except in a way that benefits America directly, and everybody else can go screw themselves.
Up to and including landing on Mars and planting the American flag. It's the ultra. It is the ultra anti-globalist.
Yeah, it is, and people think that's good, but you kind of have to be careful. I'm not saying it's not good in that sense, but I'm just saying it seems all seem too coincidental for me to be happening at this time, when that American empire. The impacts and the effects of the American empire kind of reached its peak and had run its course in a certain sense, and had to a large extent, had controlled had exerted a lot of control over much of the rest of the world. And now you're just going to bring in Trump and let Trump run wild and take it all down. Well, that just sounds like, to me, imperial collapse, like all empires do. Imperial collapse by in another way,
So
it might have happened anyway, eventually, within the next 10, 15, 20 years or something like that. It would have gone down if it had been kept on the neoliberal imperial agenda. It would have collapsed one way or another anyway.
Oh, the Russians and Chinese are saying it's ending.
Yeah, it's ending. So Trump being ushered in at this time is just going to facilitate its collapse in a different way. Or maybe actually facilitates collapse in a faster and more efficient way.
Okay, so you're not attaching any value judgment to, because you run the risk of sounding like you'd be against Trump and Jesus Christ, how do we let this guy in? I mean, he's going to wreck it all, because that is what they've been saying about him.
Yeah, but
since day one, like
you end up being in a bind basically, where it's you're damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Exactly. Slovakia. So Slovakia's prime minister survived an assassination attempt last summer, almost certainly through said imperial protecting the West rules-based order, right? There's currently a major protest underway. 100,000, well, numbers vary, but the main square in Bratislava was rammed full of people in a protest organized by the Peace Ukraine group, which is based in Bratislava, but it's basically a State Department NGO workaround. That comes a day after he's warning of a plot to oust him. He tells Parliament in Bratislava, ladies and gentlemen, I can confirm that there is a group of experts operating in Slovakia who were actively involved in events in Georgia and directly on the Maidan in Ukraine. This group is financed from various sources. He didn't say exactly where, but he's clearly insinuating that the said empire is behind it, maybe a Soros network, whatever. He also this week, and the Telegraph picked it up, he floated the idea of Slovakia leaving the EU and or NATO. So that's going on anyway. That he's elected as a populist in a small European country. He didn't need, this isn't the Trump effect. That was going on there anyway, right?
As a result of the kind of last 10 years of wokeism.
Yeah, the backlash against that. So, I mean, that's not Trump's doing.
Nobody's being emboldened by it, for sure. It'll give it lots of legs, as it will in other countries. Orban will get lots of legs from it. The AfD, the Nigel Farage, and the kind of new right wing in the UK will as well. It's going to have an effect on everybody, I think. Yeah, they're all going to. It's going to embolden all of those people, basically.
Another EU country, bigger, arguably more important economically and size-wise, and its position next to Ukraine, Romania. So the business as usual. This is where the neoliberal empire has run its course anyway. The business as usual was, it looks like the wrong guy is going to win. A populist, a nationalist, he swims in cold water. He prays to Jesus every morning. Absolutely not him. He never said, I want out of NATO, but he did have issues with the US currently building what would be like its largest base in Eastern Europe, in Romania. He said, we don't want part of this war. The war has to end in Ukraine. So it's potentially a peace. He's a peace candidate. He wins. Elections cancelled. Just like that. So that's the empire's run its course. And that's all he can resort to is just to pull the plug on it. And say Russian interference. It's obviously Washington interference / Brussels interference. Pull the plug. So, and I wish I had it, but there was, during a protest there in Romania this week, there was a woman at the head of it, and she was asked about, and she basically said, I can't remember, the gist of it was, you know what? It was something about those comforts and the idle jobs we have. What is it if I don't have my liberty? We wanted that guy. It almost smacks of American, give me liberty or give me death. She's like, I don't care how good things are economically. I want him to be my prime minister. I want to go nationalist, trad, whatever. It's the backlash, I suppose, against. So these are structural forces that are underway anyway. So Trump is the accelerant.
Yeah.
Not the instigator. He's not the
no.
The
I mean,
mastermind.
the instigator of it was the people who. I don't believe the people who are forcing leftist, woke, kind of pedo, tranny, whatever, etc. Values on people over the past 10 years. I don't believe that they actually believed that they could successfully transform the world, or most people, or the Western world at least, into a couple of billion people who all really loved that and thought that was great, and that there were drag queens and drag queen teachers in every school and pride parades down the road. I don't believe that they really thought that they could go there, but they went ahead and tried to force it down people's throats anyway, and let it go until a certain point, until they saw the backlash rising up, and they say, okay, now we're going to stop doing that, and we're going to let the right wing candidates in. I mean, you can say that's a natural order, because if you want to say it's a natural function or it's a natural process, then fair enough. But that means you remove any controlling hand behind the scenes. You remove anybody who's trying to shoot Trump, or anybody who's firing lasers at California and all that kind of stuff. You remove that power, that guiding force behind the scenes, and say, okay, it's just a natural function of, if you try, some crazy people just happen to get into power, and politicians, somehow all the lefty, wokey politicians over the past 10 or 15 years got into power 10 or 15 years ago, and then stayed in power. And somehow, despite the fact that the vast majority of the population of any country, well, let's say the large majority of the population of any country would never have wanted drag queens in their schools, somehow they went along with it for 10 or 15 years. But then hang on a minute, I don't like trannies in my kids' school. I just realized that. I used to, for some reason, I thought that was a good idea 5 years ago, but now I really, really don't like it. So
that's where it's
obvious that was being forced on people, and it was being forced on people. People were being cowed and censored and shut down and threatened to prevent them from saying anything about it. But the majority of people,
it was artificially imposed.
Right. The majority of the people in pretty much every single country on the planet do not want trannies and drag queens in their teaching their kids, and they don't want pride parades with men shaking their arses down the street in the middle of the day and all that kind of stuff. They don't want any of that, and they never did want any of that. No normal person ever wants that. So it was forced on people over the past 10, 15 years, and people accepted it because it was being forced on them, because people are compliant, and they say, okay, well, if you're going to tell me I'm a bad person for saying anything about it, well, then maybe I'll just shut up and see if it goes away. But then they force it, and eventually people have had too much. And then they read that, the people who have been doing this read that and go, okay, now's a good time to stop that. And it's a good time for Trump to be here. And it's a good time for him to accelerate and capitalize on or encourage the obvious right-wing backlash against those 15 years of wokery. And then we're going to use that for some particular aim.
But that's the question, is whether or not they thought that they could get away with it.
Get away with what?
With forcing it on everyone.
Forever.
Yeah.
You think that they would have actually been able to? Well, maybe they're
that's
so delusional.
Whether they thought they could, I think that's a separate issue. The question in my mind is whether or not that was the original intent, was to just keep going with it, because it was. I don't think that's long.
I don't think that's stupid. I think there were two aims. One was to try and fuck with people's heads and try and inculcate into at least as many people who were receptive to it, that kind of aberrant, depraved kind of ideology of gender transitioning surgery and all that kind of stuff, and drag queens, promoting people who are obviously have have psychological issues. As people who should be teaching your children and all that kind of stuff. They wanted to push that in society because they like to fuck with people's heads, basically, and just mess up with their morality and their value system. But maybe they thought, yeah, we can do this for 1 million years. We can push it so far that basically every single person on the planet would be a tranny. we'll turn everybody trans. We'll have everybody, either every male will have boobs and every female will have a penis on the planet. Like 8 billion people. That's what I'm talking about, people. We want 8 billion people on the planet who are actually trans. You think that's what they wanted? Or they wanted some radical, some less extreme version of that, but like basically everybody absolutely internally absorbs the woke ideology. If they thought that, they were pretty delusional.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Is like these people are like fundamentally delusional.
Okay, so maybe they thought whether or not they thought at the start, they realized pretty quick that it wasn't happening.
Yeah,
they realized that these are normal human beings, and they don't like that, and there was going to be a backlash. And then when they see the backlash coming, they push it so far, and they say, "Okay, looks like the backlash is brewing. It's getting to a point here where we should probably back off on that, and let's in fact flip it around." From a social engineering point of view, let's flip it around and allow that backlash to manifest rather than try and tamp it down,
Yeah. So the premise is that you have power for power's sake, and how you wield it and how you sustain it is adjusted. So it's on a micro scale. It's like when you look at the individual, you've got Zuckerberg. He's 100% censorship friendly. He's got the Atlantic fact checkers right in there. He's got 40,000 of them. He's like 100% all in. And then overnight, he just became MAGA?
Yeah.
He knows, there's a wind shift. Okay. Right. I know tomorrow for July 4th last year, I'll get on a surfboard, drinking a beer, and waving an American flag, and people love me. That's like, he didn't change. He's still interested in power and success, and the ways to get there. They can change that overnight, among themselves, but they're still consistent in seeking and sustaining power.
That's why I think that it was that they really did delude themselves into thinking that they could get away with it at the beginning. But then eventually coming to find out that there was more backlash to it, that people weren't going to just accept it like they thought that they would.
Remember that if the part of the premise of, they say that maxim that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, if it's in fact further than that they're psychopaths or something akin to that, they fundamentally think differently, and they look at the other people and go, they don't understand this at all, but they can see over the course of 10 years, okay, these weird other people, that's humans to you and I, they really don't like this. Okay, well, we'll just adjust.
Yeah. What the question comes down to is, I mean, maybe I'm going a bit too far in the area of the amount of control that they wield, and it's not so much that they have this grand plan that they implement over decades, like Mwaha, and they put every single piece in place, and they know decades in advance that at this point we'll be able to do this and this kind of, and stuff. There is a certain amount of variability to the whole process, but that certainly, I think, they adjust as time goes on. They try something on, they see how it works, they push it as far as they can, and then they come up with the plan that, let's say in this case, this is having the effect of creating a growing backlash against this left-wing ideology. So it would serve our interests to, at a certain point, like now, to allow that backlash to spread and take hold and manifest.
So then, in your like kind of analysis on the way that the world was going to, or is going to, dramatically shift, and the way you were describing it as with the empire falling, and then like Europe is specifically where it would go back into more fractured
feudal
nation states, jostling for position on the European continent. Doggy Dog World returns, at
a time when you've got climate change and food scarcity and increasing earth changes and other factors that are just making the whole thing worse. You know what I mean? It's in a certain sense you could say that.
Well, what I was going to say is that then it behooves them to actually get a more nationalist party in place for for the strength to be able to jostle for position.
Yeah, but there's going to be losers in that.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's going to be losers in that, and no one wants to be the loser.
And the problem is that you won't totally divorce yourself from from the globalized nature of the world. The whole infrastructure, the globalist nature of trade and the production of food and the shipment of food and all that kind of stuff still exists behind all this. So you can't do away with that. I mean, basically the system that we've lived under since the Second World War, or before that, whatever, go back to the British Empire if you want. But anyway, the system that we've lived under, increasingly globalized world controlled by fewer and fewer people, lends itself, or the appropriate system of government in that world is, or the natural system of government in that world is an empire. You know, it's a globalized world. Everybody's connected together. All the food's being transported around by different companies. People are buying from everybody else, trading. They're all interdependent on each other, and they've got used to that. And it makes sense that rather than have everybody all be the decision makers in that you'd have one top-down, global imperial decision maker who would control all that. And you see that in the way international companies are structured and all that kind of stuff. The big companies that control a lot of the world's resources. Very few people, the golden billion, let's say, but even beyond that, the 1% and all that kind of stuff. That all happens naturally, and that's the way a globalized world naturally works, let's say. Whether or not they're good or bad people at the top is a different question. They happen to be not very nice people at the top, but that's a proper structure for it. So to maintain that globalized economic world and try and impose on it or push it back into feudalized or federalized community of nations around the world, there's a kind of a mismatch there, and the two of them don't work very well together. You have to restart, you have to retool the whole thing from the get-go. It's basically like the 19th century, with nukes and hypersonic missiles and jets, which actually followed on from that was First and Second World War, actually.
I imagine most Asians and Africans listening to this conversation would be like, welcome to the club, boys.
Yeah.
Like, we are only talking about the golden billion.
Yeah, but they control most of they have their hands in the levers of the economic levers of the globe, to a large extent.
Yes. Do they? China?
Well, China's tied into it, like.
Yeah.
China has always been, throughout all of this, China has been very accommodating, let's say. They haven't wanted to rock the boat as much as Russia and China and the BRICS countries are trying to create a different world order. In fact, that's what you could say. That's what BRICS is. BRICS is them, those countries, Russia and China in particular, having an awareness of this of the way the world would go. That the American Empire, the American Empire was going to fall and collapse, and you needed to prepare something. You needed to prepare a new order, a new economic, diplomatic, political, social even order to replace it. That's a good idea. That's why they've been doing the BRICS thing. But it's a bit, I think it's too late in a certain sense. They're coming to it too late. And in fact, the powers that be behind the scenes,
too late for Westerners.
Well, it's too late for the world.
You think there'd be a chain reaction that would affect China and Russia directly?
Yeah, for sure. And it's too late for the world in a certain sense. To try and, while it's a noble endeavor, it's the whole BRICS multipolar world thing is coming too late. Maybe it's a good model for after some kind of a collapse and a rebuilding along those lines. But that would happen maybe naturally anyway. But I think it's a good idea that's there. But I don't think they're going to be able to transition to a multipolar world.
You yourself
seamlessly
have said people
collapse.
are incredibly adaptable, though.
Yeah, I don't mean everybody's going to die, but everybody's going to.
Okay, you've heard this. You've heard this before. We've played it before. I think now I want to play it again from Putin about the vampire's ball and put it in context of what you're saying. Can you play that one? Wait, let me preamble. It's from like 2 years ago, I think. This isn't like recent.
Many people in the world, they are looking at what's happening in our country, what's happening in our struggle for our interests. And here is an important thing. Why is it happening? not because we are formally a BRICS member or we have some traditional relations with Africa, which is also important as well. But the gist of it is different. The gist of it is that the so-called golden billion for centuries, for 500 years, they have practically lived off of other peoples. They were ripping apart these poor peoples, poor nations of Africa. They exploited Latin America. They exploited the countries of Asia. And of course, no one forgets this. And I have a feeling that it's not even about the leaders of these countries, even though it is a very important thing, but the common people of these countries. In their heart, they can feel what's happening. They can see our struggle for our independence, for our true sovereignty. And they see this connection with their aspirations to be truly independent, which is exacerbated by the fact that in the Western elites, there is a strong desire to freeze the current unfair state of things in international affairs. For centuries, they've been stuffing their stomachs with human flesh and they've been stuffing their pockets with money, but they must realize that this ball of vampires is about to end.
It is. But I would ask Putin, they're like, so how's that going to happen?
He's saying it. And Lavrov has said it before, this is happening structurally, inevitably anyway. And the examples he actually gives is the neoliberal system, never mind Trump, slapping sanctions on more and more. Obviously, Russia's been the primary victim of it, but Iran going back to 1979 and so on, that their use of the system they created is ending their own system. People are turning away from hegemony. Hegemony is withering on the vine anyway. That's the fundamental shift that's happening in our time.
Yeah.
Now Trump come along, and he might be the catalyst for it from the American side, but it won't be his doing.
No, but
and or Vlad looks pretty. He doesn't look too worried about it.
Well, he never looks worried. It's. Yeah, I think the difference with the way they used sanctions and tariffs and all that kind of stuff was to threaten other countries who didn't play ball to keep them in line, but then they would be catered to afterwards. Trump is removing the catered to afterwards element. We're not going to help you anymore. You're not going to be part of any club anymore. We're not going to give you scraps from the imperial table and keep you afloat, or we'll bring you into the club depending on how much you comply and all that kind of stuff. We're not going to separate the world into allies and enemies based on a goal of maintaining global order under our control. We're going to separate the world into allies and enemies. Well, as far as Trump's concerned, it's not even allies and enemies. It's like even your allies can just be
kicks to the curb.
Yeah, kicked to the curb, or told, listen, this is what's going on openly, or screw you. You know, there's no. It's America, you know. It's what's good for America. End of story. You know what I mean? And that's not what the way the empire operated. You know, they in their minds were what's good for the world. Our idea of what's good for the world is that we control the world, but we have a sense of responsibility, that right to protect and all that kind of stuff that is enshrined in policies and humanitarian policies and all that kind of stuff. Where what's right for the world is that we control it, but we have a responsibility to the world to maintain the empire and to keep things more or less balanced. You know,
wow, fundamentally imbalanced.
But fundamentally imbalanced by nature. But you can't have an empire doesn't operate really any other way. It's very difficult to run an empire any other way because you either have an empire or you don't.
It was consistently natural in that it had equilibrium. It was stable enough while it lasted.
Right. Yeah, and they would always hark back to the First and Second World War and stuff, and how empires. But the world isn't a perfect place. Never has been. Can't be. But you just have to maintain as much order as possible. It's, the least bad option, basically. Of course, there's a lot of flaws in that, and there could be a much better view of the world and how the world cooperates together and all that kind of stuff, which is to some extent enshrined in BRICS and in the multipolar world idea. But
so is the least bad option to continue with the devil you know?
No, because of the way it was being run, and the intent of the people who are running the empire, the neoliberal global order. They were running it into the ground. Basically, they were getting increasingly greedy, and there's other factors that were impacting on that. Their idea of a millennium, a golden, wonderful millennium, where the American empire would rule for technically forever type thing, is maybe maybe it was possible, but it would have been under the aegis of it would have been governed or ruled by this ideology that these people have, which is this kind of anti-human, depraved, radical lefty ideology that we're trying to push on people. So that was a non-starter from the get-go in terms of getting people on board with it. And secondly, so it's pathology at the top in that sense, that destroys the ability for an empire to actually rule, like a good empire to rule. But also there's the fact that they know that the world is becoming more and more stable from a natural point of view, from earth changes and climate change and all that kind of stuff, and food production. We've seen changing weather patterns and all that kind of stuff that is and is going to continue to pose problems for the ability to actually, let's say, feed the world, or for the world to maintain, for it to be, civilization to maintain itself at the level it has done under this empire. So it was all. So there are other external factors that are impacting on this, But
I'm just not sure how to weigh them up economically. I mean, COVID, not the virus, the government actions with them. The US went on a major money printing spree, which Putin described in some detail as they used the opportunity to hoard the shit out of everything from all over the world. They gobbled up, causing imbalance and instability and hunger in Africa. That seamlessly transitioned into the Ukraine war, where Russia was still trying to, because it has a grain surplus, and it was still trying to do its bartering trade with Egypt and elsewhere in Africa, but the ships were impounded because Russia bad. Again, exacerbating imbalance and food insecurity. The empire was doing the insecurity and the imbalancing, and Russia was trying to put out the fires as best it could.
Yeah. America, the problem is America has served as an example, as a protector of the global order, and has served as an example of how you go about international relations and relations between countries. And it's not that people willingly followed it, but because America put pressure on those countries to follow that process, and they manipulated inside governments and all that kind of stuff. But still, America is seen as the reference. So people look to America, especially the vassals, the entrenched vassals. So when they see Trump coming in now and talking about
taking Greenland,
making threats towards Canada and all that kind of stuff, saying Canada isn't sovereign.
Oh yeah, today
that kind of stuff.
Nuts.
What do you say? Without our subsidy, Canada doesn't exist, really. That kind of stuff. I mean, that's other countries are going to see that, and they're going to say, "Well, okay, saying that about Canada, he probably thinks the same thing about us."
Yeah.
So European countries, for example, realize that they don't have this benefactor anymore. They don't have the patron who's going to look after them and keep things controlled within their countries and that kind of stuff. So, they're going to start thinking about how does European inter-European country relationships, how does that work now?
Yeah, they all dependent on each other for energy at the moment.
Well, exactly. But so who is it, since Trump is coming out with this, me first attitude, and you can basically, you can invade or threaten your neighboring country, like everybody thought America and Canada were joined to the hip for so long, and here's Trump turning around saying, Canada doesn't even exist as a country and it needs to be the 51st state and that kind of stuff. And, they thought, yeah, he's said that stuff about Greenland and stuff.
Yeah, it's the art of the deal.
But then they start to see that he's serious about Greenland, and they wonder how serious he is about Canada, and is he going to impose serious tariffs in Canada? And your man, Poilievre, the prospective new
PM,
replacement for, not replacement, but potentially the new Prime Minister for Canada, he's talking in interviews by saying that, look, we'll do exactly the same. We need to, he's basically he started talking like Trump. Basically, we need to start, if America imposes tariffs on us, we'll impose tariffs back on them. We're going to look at all the things that we don't need from America. So we're going to stop buying those things. We're going to start producing. We're going to start. He's basically like, we need to start drilling.
Trade goes down. Fracking, prices go up.
We need to start mining. We need to start mining more in our country. We need to start trading within the provinces within Canada, because there's also tariffs.
They don't have refineries. They send it all down through Louisiana.
Right, exactly. So he said, that's not possible. If that's not possible anymore, then we'll start building those in Canada, and then we become we're effectively antagonistic. We're in a trade war
with our neighbor.
With our neighbor. And then Europeans are looking at that and they're saying, well, should we follow suit here? Are we going to, what kind of relationship, what kind of attitude should we have? Should Germany have to France, or should Germany have to the UK, or, so it can all, by example, and not just by example, but when they see the real world effects of it, it's like, we got to get on this train. We got to get on this new thing sooner rather than later, because we don't want to be the last one standing. It's a game of musical chairs. We don't want to be missing our seat.
I think that we've at times we've said the world, but in fact we're thinking more specifically of the West.
Yeah,
and even then we should probably bring it in closer. Canada might well, be able to. It's big and so on. It has resources. Europe doesn't. Well, it doesn't have energy independence. Especially for a population of 500 million people. So really, it's Europe it's going to be the most screwed, which is what you began telling me earlier in the week, and I was like, "What? It'll be fine." But now that we've talked this through, Europe is looking pretty fucked. It would take so many things to change, not least like immediate peace with Russia, and that's why Orban and Fico have kept it in. And Fico, at the risk of having his head blown off, flew to Moscow, to say, by the way, when this shit goes down, we're cool, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're all anticipating what I'm saying happening to one extent or another. They probably don't see it in as dire terms as I do, but they're all anticipating it. And like, we haven't even talked about the Middle East and that kind of stuff, with Trump talking about drill baby drill and fracking and natural gas. We're going to supply we're only going to have as much. We're going to supply our own needs fully, but we're going to do that first, and then we're going to any excess we'll sell to the rest of the world. But we want to be able to sell to the rest of the world, so we need to produce more oil and gas, because we need to be the preeminent energy powerhouse on the planet. And it's like the Saudis are going, hang on a minute, what do you mean? Say that again.
Yeah.
The Saudis are like, what do you mean? The deal, the whole
petrodollar
thing is like, no, fuck the petrodollar. No, it's the American dollar. It's the American dollar backed by American oil, not backed by Saudi oil, effectively. And the Saudis are going to be unhappy with that. And then you've got they're going to be looking elsewhere, and they've already been doing that over the past few years, really. And of course, they would be the main supplier. Then, of course, America would Trump wants to supply oil and gas to Europe, wants to be the main supplier of oil and gas to Europe, which puts him directly in competition with the Russians, and to some extent the Middle Eastern states as well. And China obviously is a big energy hog. So yeah, the whole thing is just, I think what you're going to see is just the whole thing falling apart in terms of the way the relationships have been organized and have been established for quite a long time. Now that all falling apart, and new relationships and new partnerships being made in different regions, which when those economic partnerships, particularly for energy and different resources, and when that happens, then that immediately changes political relationships. Political relationships are downstream from economic relationships, which is why they blew up Nord Stream, basically. They know that's 101, right? So you will have kind of dramatic changes in orientation of certain countries towards who they're friends with. And if we're not friends energetically anymore, and therefore we're not friends politically anymore, which means we're not friends militarily anymore. And any and all of those changes in alliances will not be looked favorably upon by Trump if it implies a moving away from a good relationship with America to...
Well, he can't have it both ways.
Well, he wants it always.
No.
Yeah. And then America will become
Trump
will become more and more aggressive.
We stay your vassals, and we just get a worse deal than before.
Yeah. But that's what he wants.
Fuck that.
Well, he said. He's saying they've been doing the opposite of that up until now. So there needs to be a swing back to the other side. America's been getting, like he keeps saying, has been getting a raw deal all these years, and we're out to get some recompense. We're out to reset that imbalance, and there's nothing off the table basically, you know. So it's going to be defined. These next 4 years are going to be defined by the Trump administration being increasingly, what you've seen already, but being increasingly antagonistic and unfriendly in various different ways to its former allies. And that whole, from the Western point of view, the Western alliance, as a result of that falling apart, and new alliances being made, which just exacerbates the differences, and probably more and more of the world not being friends with America.
Yeah, that's the upshot. Is
right.
People turn on the hegemon,
right?
Because
the hegemon has turned on them. Because the hegemon it was a hegemon, but it was a quote unquote benevolent hegemon. But the hegemon has now turned on its vassals, and the vassals are going to have to figure out how to
grow some balls.
Yeah, and figure out how to defend themselves.
Yeah. Make Europe great.
Yeah, because that's the thing. They had their they had their cake and they were eating it too. And like you were saying, it was they were getting the benefits of having basically the world's policeman keeping everybody in check and everybody in line, and so they were able to do things. And so now that things are starting to shake up, it'll be interesting to see just how things go as a result of that, because, well, you can't, like, as an example, if all of these things start to happen and then energy becomes an issue, because you can't keep going with the wind farm that doesn't produce any energy.
Yeah,
if like you're having to pay, absurd amounts for American oil, and in Germany
or LNG,
LNG. It's the same thing there, where the policies that they've enacted and the things that they've been trying to do over the past 20, 30 plus years, trying to go for these green energies, which are absurd on their face. Because of how inefficient and ineffective and blah, blah, blah. And so now you're going to have to undo all of those things that you did in order to try and redo all the things that you shut down, like, what was it? Germany shutting down and France shutting down its nuclear power plants.
Oh, Germany, not France.
Was it Germany?
Yes, Germany.
So, I mean, that was stupid.
Yeah.
But
and their coal plants.
And so now this is bringing that to a head where they're going to actually have to redo that thing. But then how do you make that happen when you still have the government in place that's telling us that we need the green energies?
Exactly. So the regime change comes first. I can't see the Macronists in Paris taking a real politics stance in the next few months. Like, they're gone.
They'll be gone, yeah.
They're all gone. AfD in Germany, etc. So there has to be a political realignment first.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll see.
Yeah. Because then once that happens, again, the way that things have been structured thus far was within the neoliberal world order. And so in order to enact these other policies, you have to change it up. But the groups that are on the rise are not quite within the club. I guess we could put it that way.
Yeah.
Then how does that shape up exactly? How does that
a reversion to populism is, like I said, it's you go back to the 19th century and it becomes France for the French, Germany for the Germans. That's what nationalism and populism is about, And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but like that's what gave rise to the First and Second World War and the wars previous, the wars in the 19th century and going back into the 18th century. All the European wars. That was a result of these discrete countries being.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think it's going to happen. What I mean is there'll be some semblance of that, of a return to that mindset, and the European Union is gone. Like there is no. I mean, it was a sham anyway. In a certain sense, there was no European, integration or integrity. It wasn't.
You're probably right, but Orban is calling for occupying Brussels, as in. There's more to.
What does he mean by
that was a soundbite that came out of his speech, but he's on the radio there in Budapest saying like, we need to basically save the EU as such, but make it.
Yeah, but how can you save it?
Less gay.
Less bureaucratic, because like that kind of it's like exactly what Trump's doing in America, right? He looks at America and the way the American system developed as an empire. It was just massively top heavy with bureaucracy. And that's what DOGE is about, right? The Department of Government Efficiency, getting rid of all these different departments. Look what Malay's doing, He's like, afuera, throwing all these different departments out. That's what happens. But so how can you could occupy Brussels and try and turn the European Union into some kind of less, as you said, gay, but less lefty, liberal version of itself. But if you do that, you eviscerate, you get rid of all the unnecessary bureaucracy, and you're left with nothing.
You're left with a lot of savings.
But you're left with nothing. You're left with no European Union.
The European Union was a trade zone,
right,
for most of its history.
Yeah,
it's only thanks to a couple of treaties, Maastricht being a key one in 1991. That it became something bigger than that, where they added a whole bunch of sections. You can afuera those sections and you can still have the European Economic Community. Well, it doesn't have to be such a gay title, but it can be a trade zone.
It would have to be very, very scaled back. And even then...
And even in the 19th century, there was a trade zone. Yeah. The Hohenzollern, it was a German term for it.
But that's just normal trade. That's just normal trade agreement. That comes back to just very normal trade
Germany boomed under that. Germany was at its awesomest under that. It basically invented chemistry at that time.
Right. But then do you have some kind of a unity, some kind of political unity as well? How can you have good economic trade relationships?
Inevitably you will.
That's what I'm saying, because political union is downstream from economic union, right? Or economic relationships. It leads to political relationships.
Yeah.
But then what if Trump is targeting one major European country with tariffs, or with punitive sanctions or something? Do the rest of the European countries all rally round and help, or do they go, fuck them, we're with America because we're getting a good deal from America, we're friendly with America, but so America is a source of divisiveness within any kind of potential European economic or political kind of brotherhood by targeting one country, and then the rest of the other European countries would have to decide, well, do we side with Germany? Like, if Germany's targeted, does France say we'll side with Germany against America? And in that way, screw our relationship with America as well? Will America then turn on us? So it's a source of division.
Yeah, but
Trump is a source of division.
The US is dependent on Europe. It kind of almost culturally. A lot of its self-image is because we're whiteys, we're Europeans, we're Christian.
Yeah,
we came from Europe.
When it comes down to money talks, and
they need Europe.
Ethno.
Yeah, and they need Europe as a market. America's going to go awesome again with industry. Where's it going to send a surplus?
Yeah,
it's going to need somewhere that's a reliable export market.
Certain countries.
But if Europe has a regime change down the line, it's not going to be so easy for the US. Or if there's going to be counter tariffs.
But only from countries
to protect European industry.
Well, to protect German and to forget about European.
You're German then.
Protect. Yeah, that's an important shift. Like, you talk about European industry, European this, European that. There isn't going to be European industry anymore. There's going to be
Airbus is bigger than Boeing.
There's going to be I'm saying there's going to be German.
Unless the US can destroy it.
There's going to be German.
Airbus is bigger than Boeing.
There's going to be German industry. There's going to be French industry. There's going to be British industry. There's going to be Spanish industry. There's going to be Italian industry, and they're all going to be fundamentally looking to their own interests. That's what it's going to spread. Like, I mean, that's what I'm saying. America is such a powerhouse, such a global powerhouse, and it's called the shots for so long that what America does, by definition, infects. Did you say that if China sneezed, the rest of the world got a cold? I think for some reason.
I think that was said about the US after Wall Street.
But if America, right, if America sneezes,
everyone else gets a cold.
So America starts going kind of every man for himself. Then other countries that are particularly tied to America and dependent on America or interrelated with America are going to go the same way. They have no choice. And that leads to chaos of one form or another.
Well, I mean, it's certainly chaotic compared to the way things have been, where it's controlled chaos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then it'll just be uncontrolled.
I mean, it's a good thing because it's an unveiling and it's a kind of like a kind of back to basics in a certain sense. But like I said, you can't undo the global imperial structure or pull out the several pillars of the global imperial structure without causing either ultimately a complete collapse or serious chaos and imbalance, let's say, or not imbalance, but in the process you can't do that, and that's not even talking about, that doesn't even include external factors, like I said, which are, I think, going to be a major kind of monkey wrench in the whole works. It's theoretically possible to do it in a relatively smooth way, but I think
so then
environmentally, the way the world is going is going to be the wild card.
So that was what I was going to bring up, was because Trump is inaugurated, and then the next day people are waking up and there's like a foot of snow in Florida, New Orleans, all along the Gulf Coast, the Gulf of America.
Which he had just renamed Gulf of America. Nature says, watch this, freezes it. Record-breaking cold and frost and snow. All-time U.S. snowfall records broken in Florida, albeit in the north, in the Panhandle, and in New Orleans. All-time U.S. record. That's technically true, but there's one time when the colonialists they would have seen that. There's a book called A Cold Welcome. It's about the Little Ice Age in North America. So that's like 1600s into or around 1700.
Yeah, brutal.
And they were some of the first, at least the first Anglos coming down into the Gulf of America, if that's what we're calling it. Gulf of Mexico, damn it. And they couldn't believe it. It's like it's a frozen tundra. They thought that was it. They thought that's what but that was exceptional. But it was Little Ice Age conditions, which the US got a kind of glimpse of this week.
Yeah.
Freaky.
And it was just, it was something that no one in the mainstream world, like everyone's commenting on it, like, oh my gosh, did you see the videos? Sure. Look at the pictures. Like you even made a mention of it on Twitter about, they had the attack in New Orleans, right
on New Year's Day,
and then whatever they tried to do with that, it's just kind of like, well, now it's just this beautiful winter wonderland.
I know it's supposed to instill terror and fear and, I don't know, business as usual in how the US is run. And within 10 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, nature's like, people were, there's videos of snow fights on the very street where terror struck the American homeland, ISIS, on New Year's Day. And then 2 weeks later, it's like snowball fight on Bourbon Street.
So they're not, because everyone's talking about climate change as far as like global warming and everything getting hotter and the ice melting and blah, blah, blah. and no one's looking at this and seeing the obvious, where the science used to say that there was an ice age coming, and it was around this time that they were predicting that it could happen, and that this is happening. I almost, like, in a sense, could kind of say that maybe it's ascribing too much to Mother Nature to like put it so close to the inauguration that it's like a message to anyone who's paying attention that, like, Trump is in, and guess what's coming.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So no one else is putting the 2 and 2 together on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they should.
Mm-hmm. It's and it's not just that. It's not just an ice age, but I mean it's what precedes an ice age, which is just chaotic weather patterns. We've been seeing that over the past number of years, increasingly. Rainfall, major downpours and rainfall in places that usually don't get it. And the main point of all that is crop yields. A lot of rainfall at the wrong time of the year, or not enough rainfall, or drought at the wrong time of the year, obviously, directly impacts crop yields. And in a globalized world where many countries are reliant on food that comes from very far away and all that kind of stuff, that's the way it's set up. What are you going to do? I mean, literally, what are you going to do? It's the same with oil and gas. Like, you get your oil and gas from this one country all the time, right? And you've been used to that, right? And then suddenly you're not getting it from there anymore. Well, you got to retool very quickly, and suddenly other people are trying to do the same thing. So for a long, long time, you've been getting all your rice or all your corn or all your grain or whatever from one particular country or one particular area, or a few of them, whatever. And suddenly that's no longer possible. Now you got to shift to somewhere else. But everybody else is shifting to somewhere else as well. And there's all sorts of trade wars, and you throw in Trump's tariffs and all that kind of stuff. It's a shit show. This is from a few years ago. Global climate change impact on crops expected within 10 years, and the basic thing, in brief, climate change may affect the production of maize, corn, and wheat as early as 2030, but probably beforehand. Blah 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 blah. You can read about it, but basically, on the ground, the way that happens is unseasonable weather, and it's been happening all over the world in the past number of years, increasingly. So, I'm just saying.
Yeah, the flooding in Spain late last year wiped out the winter season crops for basically the entire European market.
Yeah.
I think there were no salad stuffs in the UK supermarkets for Christmas. When
that kind of shit's starts happening, you realize, what do you do? What does any one country do? Well, they say, well, look, if we're able, we're going to try and secure access to certain foods for our country. It's no longer, yes, ask Brussels to make sure. France says we should ask Brussels to make sure that we get more. No, it's like, no, we're going to get it directly for ourselves, and we're going to elbow other people out of the way as best we can if there's a scarcity, which basically, we're talking about not just trade wars, but food wars of one description or another. We missed this. Trump also said Saturday, America could we know what he's talking about. America could soon become a bigger country. We might be in an enlarged country pretty soon, he said in Las Vegas yesterday. For years, for decades, we were the same size to the square foot. Probably got smaller, actually. But soon, that could change. And then they refer to Trump was very firm in his pushing for Denmark to relinquish control of Greenland, leaving the Danes utterly freaked out. They're all like freaked out because is he doing that? Because, what is that? What kind of signal does that say? I mean, literally, we're an ally, right? We're like one of the countries that's best friends with America, right? We're Europe, EU, special relationship, all that kind of stuff. And he's just calling us up and telling us, you little fuckers better shut your mouth, because I'm taking that country that you have control over. And it's like, okay, he's joking, right? Aren't you joking? And then he's not, and it's like, well, what does this say? I mean, what kind of message is this sending to, well, the whole world? Now you can just go and
he wants to make a deal, though. No, he's a deal maker. He wants the thing, and he's willing to make a deal for it.
to make a deal, and you better accept it. No is not an option.
Well, no is not an option, so give him a number.
Yeah.
Speaking of the weather, symbolic possible tie-in, at least for Ireland, the cold wave over the whole US. It wasn't just in the on the Gulf Coast.
Yeah.
Feeds into a winter storm that smacks Ireland. Storm Eowyn and Scotland, I think, got hit hard. You were saying to me earlier in the week, if Trump is half serious about the stuff he's saying, Ireland is the first, economically, the most exposed. That'll feel the burn. Simply because there's so many American companies there. They either employ a lot of people there, or they simply house their formal headquarters there, so that the profits are run through there, and they pay less taxes. So that's all of them: Apple, Google, Facebook, Twitter. I think they're all formally HQ'd in Dublin, and that's obviously the kind of the fake economic exposure that Ireland has to the US. It's like wide open for a serious culture shock, economic shock.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that storm, people talked it up. Was it such a big deal in the end? They said it had record wind speed, the highest ever recorded wind gust of 114 miles per hour. Breaking a record set in 1945. Would they have been able to have reliable records back then, 1945?
Well, I don't know how they measured the wind back then.
Exactly. There was major flooding as well in Sao Paulo. Again, I think this is like the fourth time in 2 years I've been saying that. It's almost like regular there.
Yeah, Ireland is in trouble. Yeah, you can see it's crazy if you look at this. Major foreign holders of U.S. state treasury securities, i.e., debt, as of April 2024. So all other at the top, you can ignore that. That's everybody else. So top is Japan. This has changed in the last years. China, I think, used to be close above Japan, but Japan, and I think that's $1 trillion, $770 billion. Then the UK in third, Luxembourg. You can kind of excuse, well, they're in a similar situation, I suppose, to Ireland. Canada 338. Cayman Islands, you can discount that because that's just offshoring stuff. Belgium and then Ireland. Ireland above France, Switzerland, Taiwan. Ireland like well above India. 1.5 billion people. Brazil, hundreds of millions of people. What's Ireland doing in there? 6 million people holding all that American debt.
It's
because they were told to. Because part of the deal was
it's surplus recycling. It's part of
the deal.
The current structure.
It's part of the deal of allowing of American tech companies setting up in Ireland that the excess income tax profits you basically make in company tax, although they don't really pay company tax.
You save it by investing it in US treasuries.
Invest it back into America, i.e. buying American debt. But so Ireland is, seriously leveraged in that respect vis-a-vis America, because they're very much dependent on America, not America continuing to be successful, because they'll be the first. They're the Central Bank of Ireland will, fall into a hole basically as soon as, if and when the American economy or American dollar starts to take a bit of a downturn. Ireland is like directly linked to that, and that's one of the reasons that Trump is talking about tariffs and stuff, is because all of those American companies set up in Ireland. The reason they're set up in Ireland, part of the deal, is that they more or less pay no tax, and they're allowed to, Americans living around the world get letters. Asking them, trying to find out if they have accounts. If you're a US citizen, even if you're a resident of another country, if you're still a US citizen and you have a bank account, in another country,
Yeah.
they want to know
Yep.
about that bank account and if you got any money in it, so they can tax you on it because you're meant to pay tax on it. Now apply that to tax companies. These tech companies in Ireland, set up in Ireland, and all of the money that they make elsewhere in the world outside of America, they end up on the accounts book pretending or making it sound like they made it in Ireland,
yeah.
where they pay no tax. And for some reason, the American government has never bothered to ask them to pay any of that tax back, as companies making a lot of money elsewhere in the world, a vast amount of money elsewhere in the world, and not paying American tax. So that could be something. I think that's something that Trump is thinking about. He hasn't spoken about it yet, but he's thinking about it in terms of Ireland and saying this needs to change. And the implications for Ireland is that you have less money. Basically, see all that money that you're making for your Celtic Tiger, and everybody's living high on the hog, and you've got all these immigrants, and you've got this great service industry, and you've lots of money in Ireland, and people are moving to Ireland because the standard of living is very high, and there's loads of money floating around. Well, Trump's like, the reason you're able to do that is because we're basically financing it. That's what he talks. That's how he talks in those things. Like, we're paying for these countries. You go, what do you mean you're paying for these countries? But that's, that is a reasonable way to say it. I.e., those countries are making a lot of money. They're making a lot of money, and that we would ordinarily be getting.
Yes.
So
at least a large chunk of it.
Yeah. So at the very least, we want some of that money.
Yeah. And
that's just gonna. And that's an example. That's a good example, actually, of imperial largesse.
Yeah.
Right. Where you capture a country economically through your American, entrepreneurial spirit. And these companies that are American companies, they go and set up in other countries, and then they provide a lot of money to these other countries. But it comes with a caveat. First of all, you got to excess money, invest it in American debt, prop up the American dollar, send it back as much as you can back to America. And the second one is, now we can own you.
Yeah.
Not just economically. Well, we're financing you economically, but that means we own you politically, and to some extent culturally, and anything else we want, basically.
And military, you have no army.
Right.
But that's fine, you'll be under our umbrella. And now Trump's saying, actually, fuck the umbrella. And they're like...
Yeah, exactly.
What am I supposed to do?
I'm no good on my own.
But this is
provided this for so long.
This will be good for people.
Well, yeah.
I know, it'll be
flying your own.
But this is... Ireland needs this, seriously. Give us back the bad roads,
But they're not going to like it, and depending on the government that gets in power.
It'll be good for them, though. Good for the soul.
I'm just saying, it's all unknown.
The land of saints and scholars, and now the land of drag queens and...
Yeah. Well, isn't it interesting that came along with it as well?
That's why people reject it. That's why, in spite of the economic incentive, they've stunned the empire managers by consistently voting for populists. And because the managers are like, we gave you, you've got every comfort you want. You can get on Netflix, watch porn all day if you want. You don't even have to go into work after COVID, but you could just stay at home and jack off. And they're like, that's everything you could possibly want. What more do you want? And people have said, I want meaning.
Yeah.
I want to have kids. I want to do something real with my life. I want to build something. And if I have to be poor for 30 years to achieve it, fuck it. I'll do it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I hear what you're saying, though. It's one thing, you got to be careful what you wish for, because it could really be chaotic.
Yeah.
The birth pangs of this transition or new world, it could be super messy.
Yeah, and I think we're getting to that point where, the empire or the global order is going to collapse because it's so corrupt, and there needs to be a reset. The Great Reset, except not as Klaus Schwab,
as he thought,
not as Klaus Schwab would imagine it. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what way you look at it, Trump is going to be the vehicle through which that happens. That's just my prediction for the next 4 years.
And everyone's going to hate him for it. Well, everyone, a chunk of people.
Yeah.
But they always did hate him. I think they knew what he portended. The bullshit reasons they gave for why they didn't like Trump. I think we've today articulated the real reason, but they couldn't themselves. They just said, I don't like his face. Yeah. And he said, grab him by the pussy. No, that isn't why you dislike him. Because pedo pedo Joe Biden was doing more than grabbing, you know.
You mean people in positions of power,
well,
you mean?
No, a lot of common people too.
Wow, I don't think so.
They see you sniffing the hair and Joe Biden's such and they know better.
The ordinary person who doesn't like Trump doesn't like him because
he's crass.
He's crass. Because he's not a politician, because they've been so
he doesn't butter you up.
Yeah, he's not fake.
They talk to you like a 12-year-old.
They've become so used to. I mean, there's the social contract and the idea that your politicians should be better than you, should be better spoken, should look better, all that kind of stuff. It's quite superficial, but that's the kind of social contract especially for superficial people. But there's also there's that mainly.
He should at least, as Rory Stewart was complaining in that tweet, he should at least pretend to have a higher cause. Instead, he's just using naked power, and I want that. I want that. Give it to me.
Yeah, people have spent so long with that kind of a politician, that kind of a leader.
Give me a lie for why you want power and wealth and money and privilege.
Keep everything from me, basically. Tell me that everything's fine. Do it all. And don't be crass. Don't be rude. Be better than me. Be someone I can look up to. And don't tell me how things really are. Don't talk about the secrets and all that kind of stuff. The social contract is I'm a worker, I pay my taxes, I get on with my little life, and you take care of the big stuff. Don't be making me responsible for it, you know. Don't be seen as someone who's interfering with my comfortable life, basically, in some way or other, you know. So that's why people don't like him, basically. They were encouraged, and then they can't think that far, so they just say, "Oh, orange man, bad. I don't like the look of his face." I mean, it's a basic blink that people had to his crassness and his lack of political acumen, let's say, and the way he speaks and all that kind of stuff. He just doesn't fit the profile of a. Mm-hmm. But then that's kind of weird. It's only people who are living quite well who have the luxury of being able to look away, to expect that a politician should be, he should be dancing like Obama and well spoken and be very charismatic and stuff, and that's good. Now I know that everything's fine, and I can get back to my iPad or my iPod or my Pilates class and my hot yoga sessions and stuff,
and not think about
but if you're struggling and things are hard, well, you're going to want someone exactly the opposite effect. You're going to want a more of a down to earth. I mean, there's probably a happy medium, someone like a JFK who could talk to and relate to the ordinary person, but also had a bit of class. But we don't have those very often. And the best you can get these days is someone like Trump. And he has actually, because you can dispense easily with the appearance, you know, the appearance of political acumen and well-spokenness and all that kind of stuff. As long as you can get a sense that he's actually well-meaning, that he actually cares about the ordinary people and he wants to do something to help them. That's the most important thing, obviously. But if you don't need any help, then that's out the window. I don't need any help. I've got like I said, hot yoga and Pilates, and I've got my therapist and stuff. I don't need any of that. I can pay for all that stuff. I don't need someone to care about me. I'm very well taken care of as it is, you know. But when times get hard, you want a man of the people. And maybe it's indicative of the majority of people in America, majority of the electorate in America, how they were feeling in terms of economically and that kind of stuff, but also morally. And, you know, so I mean, for me, the fact that so many people voted for Trump twice, and probably more people than is officially admitted, is credit to the American people in terms of being able to recognize the bullshit of the establishment politicians and their immorality, and opting for someone who spoke their language, basically, because knowing that that's the most important thing. Someone who actually speaks your language, and actually you get a feel from them that they actually care about you. They do what they'll say, and they do have an interest in the ordinary person, in the welfare of the ordinary person. But like I said, the ordinary person has to need welfare, or there has to be something wrong with their welfare for them to actually look to a person like that. So you can read something was very wrong in America, amongst the American population, by the fact that they voted for someone like Trump. There was something not going right, you know. Maybe it wasn't specifically economics, although for quite a lot of people it probably is economics. And for others who are still have been, doing okay economically, then it must have been some sense of morality, you know, and something within the majority of the American electorate, which is, you know, and that within them they felt more. They were conservatives. They wanted. It was a moral question.
I think it was immigration, no,
and immigration. But that gets into kind of morality in a certain sense, in group.
It's a bit of both. Economics too,
because you're bringing in people who
cheapening
aren't of your religion,
cheapening wages.
Yeah,
because there's plenty of people who are well-to-do and are speaking out about a lot of things, and you can't say that's like economic unless you want to say that them complaining about it is a grift. And so then, if you take the economic situation out of that equation, then it becomes like they just want like some truth. How about it? Just like, can I just get a little bit of truth?
Mm-hmm.
Because literally everything you're saying is bullshit.
Mm-hmm. And
I know you're lying to me. And I know this isn't for my benefit. I know this is for your benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So why are you? So let's cut the crap.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a fair number of people who are like, let's cut the crap.
Mm-hmm.
On top of, the people who are suffering economically for all of the various things that they can look to and see, you're saying this was for my benefit, but I didn't benefit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you have the people, for who did benefit, and they're like, I know you're lying to me and I benefited, but you're still lying, and now all of these other people are suffering.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's just a natural backlash for a number of people.
Yeah. For me, the question in terms of Europe, obviously, American intel agencies and State Department types are well infiltrated into European countries and have been directing, as you mentioned previously, about, they tried someone tried to assassinate Fico, the Romanian president, and all that kind of stuff. That's all American deep state kind of stuff, exerting its control and its influence over Europe. So for me, the question is whether or not that goes away as well, because they're still able to do that beyond Trump. They're still that deep state behind Trump.
It's
so if
effectively a separate country. There may as well be two United States.
Yeah, exactly.
The other one has its own everything.
But if they cut their ties in that sense, or they stop doing that, stop exerting that influence and pressure on European countries, and allow the natural order to manifest, and stop influencing elections probably as well, and allow the actual will of the people in European countries at this point in time, after 15 years of wokeism and that backlash, it's going to produce populist governments across Europe. Now, they could still stop that by the same ways and means they stopped it previously. Just because Trump's in power doesn't mean that there's this unstoppable wave of Trumpist populism that's going to sweep across the ground.
If they had any inclination or any inkling that they're as popular as they really are, if Trump really did get over 60%, 70%, and people knew that, because we don't know the exact numbers of what any of these elections are. That's part of the problem, and that's partly intentional, because if they can keep people from knowing the true extent of the number of people around them who all agree, it effectively stops them from being a check on all of the things that they're trying to do. So if people had that knowledge, had that awareness, and they knew it, then there would be that kind of major
populist backlash. Yeah, but like I said, they've been the American intel types have been stopping that from happening for quite a long time. Like I said, they can still do that if they want.
Yeah.
It's a big ask, but there would have to be a purge. You would have to purge your country of them.
No, but what I'm saying is, what's interesting for me is whether or not they pull back and stop doing it themselves.
Voluntarily, before they're kicked out.
No, but not even before they're kicked out. That they simply stop doing it. They could continue to do it.
Oh,
but they will choose not to, and that's what I've been saying. Basically, is I think that the
so far, no.
Well, it's still early days.
Yeah.
They were still doing it up until Fico last summer, and
he's warned, and then within 24 hours, a massive protests are up to calling for his head.
Right? Yeah, for sure. But that could be
this week.
Yeah, you wonder to what extent that's
inertia.
hangover from the systems that were put in place before. So we'll have to wait and see. But it'll be interesting to see how quickly that kind of like I said, the restraints are taken off, and the natural will of the people, natural in the sense of it being a response to a backlash or being a backlash to 15 years of wokery. The natural will of the people is allowed to express itself in free and fair elections with no one interfering. And of course, that may be influenced by Trump and his economic policies and all that kind of stuff, where the governments within the country no longer play ball with American intel agencies and stuff, which they have done before, because they realize, look, the wind's changed, we need to change things up here. And but it's very difficult to separate it out, whether that idea of a natural process that you can describe quite easily, or to what extent there's a hidden hand guiding it in a certain direction. It's almost like the two blend together.
I know. If it was, but for one issue, I think I would be firmly on the camp of, the pathocrats and their systems, they're melting like the witch and Wizard of Oz. Except it you see it every day, even if it's just a post in your timeline. You scroll past it and you go, God, I wish this wasn't so, but it's there and it's screaming at you. It's all those populist governments.
Yeah, but
are pro-Israel.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. But that's never going to change. But there's another element to it, which is maybe that it's not going to be one or other. That they'll either it's either a natural process that just happens all by itself, or the intel agencies have taken their hands off the reins. There's a good chance they'll probably keep up this anti-populist rhetoric in the media and amongst certain politicians in order to make the whole situation very divisive. So you will have a rise of populism and populist governments in Europe, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a clean sweep. You're going to have still, especially in Europe, you're going to have because it's among the population as well, the old guard of socialist, European Union fanatics and all that kind of stuff who aren't just going to go away, and they're going to be emboldened. So the intel agencies will keep those propped up and keep them fed with energy and money and all that kind of stuff but they will allow populism to take hold, but at the same time encourage anti-populist movements so that you have as much conflict as possible.
Again, trying to manage the chaos.
Yeah. Well, or actually trying to create as much chaos as possible.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's on the one hand attempting to create as much chaos as possible, but at the same time also trying to nudge it in what direction. I'm still not quite sure.
This version sounds just like the same vassalization as before, just under a new guise. What Putin was alluding to as well in the clip that we played earlier, he said it a couple of times: sovereignty. There are people in the West who seek sovereignty. And sovereignty means you become independent, and you end up functionally taking the same steps as Putin did, which is you kick out the NGOs, you ban the propagandizing of children about wokery. You know what I mean? It's the same basic function. He's saying, hello, come, you just step. You just follow these steps and become sovereign.
Here's Elon Musk's girlfriend. Just 4 seconds. Georgia Maloney, it's only a short one, but she sums it all up.
Elon Musk's girlfriend.
Difenderemo la nostra identità, difenderemo Dio, patria e famiglia, e fatevene una ragione.
She's saying, she's pretty...
I'm not impressed. She was saying that in her campaign to get elected. And
I know.
She turned around and went, yes, Joe Biden, how much money to Ukraine?
But but behind, this is internal Italian politics,
Right.
We'll defend God, homeland, and family. Get used to it. So, there's definitely, I think, in the countries that have somewhat populist, nominally populist leaders, they're going to take up those reins very quickly, and they're going to be pushing that more and more. And the media, the kind of lefty Western media is going to be apoplectic about it all, and it'll feed more and more division, more and more, doomers, and that this guy is falling and all that kind of stuff because this right wing populism, fascism, Nazism is coming back to Europe, and because they don't want people to actually embrace that. I don't think they're going to drop the ball. Like I said, they take the reins off to allow it to go a certain direction, but at the same time, they keep the anti-fascist bloc going to, because they don't want actual populism, i.e. actual conservatism, to sweep over the whole world, or let's say the Western world, so that everybody actually starts to embody true conservative values and sovereignty and all that kind of stuff, because that would be horrible for them, right? Because they've been working against that for so long. But they are giving, it seems to me that they are allowing it to manifest to some extent, to a large extent, to enough extent that it divides the people. Because there's a whole social engineering aspect to this. That's kind of a meta version of all this. There's all the economics and how the world is going to restructure itself economically and all that kind of stuff, Trump and tariffs and all that kind of stuff. But above that, there are people whose main goal and aim is to keep people divided against themselves, basically against each other, that within countries in general, that they want a population divided. So they have to have that whole left-right dynamic still going strong, and Europe, America's fine, but Europe, it's just like it's horrible for that, because Europe has this whole, Hitler and fascism and Nazis and the Jews and Germany and all that kind of stuff in within living memory, and it's very socialist and all this kind of stuff. So the idea of like populist governments taking over in Europe would just be like, oh my God, it's disaster. It's all going to end. There'll be a big section of the population will be like, in America, you can get away with it.
It'll be fine. We'll get it right this time.
Yeah. Get it right.
Because this time everyone loves the Jews.
Yeah.
Yes, that's changed.
Anyway, it's super complicated, as you can imagine, to try and probe it all and try and figure out what's going on and look at it from various different angles and keep different perspectives in mind. And so you just have to watch and see what happens. But we're just trying to flesh out the broad dynamics of how things will go, not the specifics, but the broad dynamics. And we'll have to wait and see if it goes that way or not. But anyway, it's super late.
It's super late. Yeah, we've been droning on for ages. So we'll say goodbye, have we?
Yes.
Do you have a joke?
No.
Don't.
No joke this week.
No.
That's the joke.
What's Trump's... what's the difference between Trump's hair and a wet raccoon?
Go on.
A wet raccoon doesn't have $7 billion. That's actually Trump's joke.
I forgot about that. As soon as you said the punchline, I'm like, wait a minute.
Although in saying that,
he did say that.
That means his hair has $7 billion. Yeah, not him. His hair.
Yeah,
is the actual the owner of the.
If people want Man of the, they're going to get 4 years of so much Man of the People. They'll be sick of Man of the People.
Yeah,
you will be.
They'll want some polished politicians. Bring back the polished politicians. Where's Obama and his dancing and the mic drops and.
You'll be so sick of winning.
Yeah,
so sick of it.
Maybe that's what he meant. Literally, people would. Yeah, Donald, we're sick of winning. Can we stop winning?
Can we get some liars back in here?
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so we'll leave it there for this week, folks. We hope you enjoyed the show, and thanks for commenting and watching, and we'll be back next week with another one. So until then, have a good week. See ya.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Can't stop the signal now.